Hi, everybody. Mitch Chatterbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is this week's security news update. Under security and privacy alerts, this one's not very good. China's Salt Typhoon, they make up these names for these hacking groups, is attacking U.S. and foreign internet providers. What we've discovered, according to the Wall Street Journal, that the compromised internet providers include Verizon, AT&T, and Lumen. It's kind of the big three. It's also possible, they say, that the Chinese have compromised the systems that these internet providers use for executing court-ordered wiretaps. So combination of all that doesn't sound very good. What that does mean, of course, is that if you use an internet provider, kind of everybody does, right? The nature of the game, then you better figure out how to protect yourself, because you should not assume that the internet providers are going to protect you. And, if you need help with that, please contact us. Next, hackers are using bugs in Adobe Commerce and Magento to steal payment information. This is kind of not new. This happens from time to time when people find bugs in the software. But among the victims are Cisco, National Geographic, Ray-Ban, Segway, and Whirlpool. So a bunch of big companies that use this. And of course, they go after the big companies because they have a lot more credit cards than the little companies. But that doesn't mean that you won't get swept up in it. So if you use Adobe Commerce or Magento, time to do your patching now. Next, in the software and hardware department, Windows 11 24H2 is now available. I don't see anything super exciting in there. I'm sure Microsoft would argue with me about that. But, and also if you're still running Windows 10, you still have about a year left on that before support ends. So, if I were me, I would wait for a while, see what they break. But, at some point you'll have to upgrade. Next, also in the software department, this one's actually pretty nifty, I'd say. Microsoft has previewed something called administrative protection, which is a form of dynamic privilege escalation. So rather than you going off and saying to user account control, yes, I want to actually go off and execute something with all their permissions, what they're proposing to do is a just-in-time permissions elevation scheme. And there are some third parties that offer this today, but this would be the first time that it's offered built into Windows. This certainly will reduce the attack surface. This is a good thing. And when it becomes available, we don't know when. They're going to talk more about it at Ignite next month. That's their kind of developer conference. When that becomes available, you definitely should look at that and see if it'll work for you, because that will definitely reduce your attack surface. Next, there is a Fortinet remote code execution exploit that is being exploited. It was patched in February. So in theory, if you are being good little boys and girls and patching your systems, then you should have nothing to worry about. And if you are going to get a lump of coal for Christmas, then time to patch. Next, under legislative and legal, Marriott has agreed to pay $52 million, which for them, of course, is a drop in the bucket, for their data breach that they admitted to in 2018. So this is 6 years. Justice not so swift. They settled with the Attorney General in 49 states and D.C. This was a big breach. It exposed data on 137 million customers. That says that they're getting fined about, 50 cents a customer, not even 40 cents a customer. That tells you what your data is worth, apparently. Not much. And this comes back from when Marriott acquired Starwood, and Starwood came with a free present, kind of like Cracker Jacks in every box. They had already been compromised, and when Marriott picked it up, compromise came with it. So be it. Next, National Public Data, which was in the news a couple months ago, big data broker, they lost information on, and they didn't actually lose information on 2.9 billion people. They lost 2.9 billion records, which represented some number of millions of people. Initially, they said it was 1.3 million people, and then they filed for bankruptcy because obviously no one's given them any business at this point. They also said that their insurance declined coverage. Now, there's a couple of reasons why that could have happened. And by the way, if you haven't looked at your cyber risk coverage to understand what it does and doesn't cover, this would be a good time to do that, because obviously they thought that they had coverage, I guess. Possibly that the quote insurance that they had was not cyber insurance. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that they lied on their insurance application. Nobody would ever do that, of course. And they may have actually, thought they were telling the truth and actually didn't know what they're doing. And it could be that there are exclusions in the policy that says if you do this or that, then we're not going to cover you. So they're not saying why, but they claim revenue of $1.1 million a year last year. Now, how does a company that only has $1 million a year in revenue amass a database of 2.9 billion records? Pretty impressive. I'm not sure exactly how, but pretty impressive. And they only claim to have assets of between 25 and 75K, which tells me that they've been bleeding the company dry. And, so good riddance to them. That's fine. One less data broker doesn't hurt my feelings at all. Now, this one is really cool. I really like this one. The FBI decided that they were going to go after some of these crypto market influencers who are really just, my opinion, they're, apparently the FBI's opinion too, crooks. So what they did is they created this fake crypto token, and they got these influencers, what they call market makers. They got these crypto influencers to go off and pump and dump, right? So what you do is you find victims, stupid people who don't know what they're doing, to go invest their money, which is unfortunate because they lose their money. But these guys are good. They're not really market makers. They're really market manipulators. So what they do is they hype up these tokens, and then they get unsuspecting, uneducated investors to go off and buy them. Then they sell their stake in it. Of course, that causes the token to crash. And who's left are these poor, uneducated investors who, didn't know any better. And, they bought it at price X, and now it's worth 10% of that. And, maybe they invested their life savings. Who knows what they did. But in any case, the FBI is filing criminal charges, which I really, really like. This is not a civil fine. You have the potential to go to jail. And they have filed that against 18 people and organizations. So this is good. This is a good start. They need to do a lot more of it because there's a lot more crooks out there, but this is a good start. In the education department, I'm not sure I'd call this educating, but maybe it is. There was a supposed earth-shattering cybersecurity firm that was founded by former NSA Chief General Keith Alexander called IronNet. They were going to go revolutionize cybersecurity. Well, apparently, they went public right away with a $3 billion valuation. And maybe that was just a rug pull, meaning, they were trying to get gullible investors to invest money in this thing, knowing that they really didn't have anything at all. And then, they laughed all the way to the bank, and now they just shut the doors. So I don't know whether this was a rug pull, possibly not, or karma for being overly cocky. It could be that as well. So needless to say, the investors who invested their money are unhappy, and they are going to sue these guys. So I'm sure that will be in the news too. I don't think that's what General Alexander planned to do with his retirement, but I'm sure, even though he was probably just a talking head, I don't know, maybe he's an active participant, but I'm sure he's going to get sucked into this, and I don't think this is how he planned to deal with his retirement years. Next, shades of Marilyn Monroe. Happy birthday, Mr. President, except this was actually President Putin, and the Ukraine hackers went off and hacked Russian state media on Putin's birthday and sent him birthday wishes, sort of. Apparently, they did a really good job. They destroyed a bunch of stuff. They said, even the phones aren't working. Yay to the Ukrainians. Next, American Water, which is one of the largest, or maybe the largest, water and wastewater utilities in the country. They serve 14 million customers in 24 states and 18 military installations. They got hacked. It does not appear that it affected their water delivery system, so that's good. It affected probably their billing and their admin system. They haven't really said much about it. Obviously, everybody thinks it's a ransomware attack. I'm sure that's what it was. And water utilities have become a favorite target for hackers because, for the most part, their security is really crappy. And when the feds, the EPA, tried to go off and come in and start regulating, they said they filed a lawsuit. And I do think, even though I support more regulation on critical infrastructure, I do think the EPA was exceeding what they are statutorily allowed to do. And so they won the lawsuit, but they're kind of losing the war because we're seeing these water systems getting taken over right and left. And that ain't cheap. So at some point in time, they ought to come to grips with the fact that they need to improve their security. Next, what if you picked a third party? That third party got breached and they didn't have the money to make you whole. Even though it says in the contract that they're going to be responsible, liable for breaches. They don't have the money. What are you going to do? So apparently, Comcast, Truist Bank, and others hired a debt collector who lost control of the debts that they were collecting. Initially, they said it was 1.9 million people, then 3.2 million people, now 4.2 million people. We'll see. Again, one more time, they're probably not getting any new business. So that means no revenue. And since you can't get blood out of a turnip, these companies that hired them, this is a word to the wise for everybody. The company that you hire, if they don't have the funds to respond to a breach, you're on the hook. You're the one who's going to get sued. You're the one who's going to get fined. And you can try to, cross sue the company that you hired. But if they're no more or they're in bankruptcy, good luck getting any money. So, in this particular case, Comcast and Truist, at least, they have the pockets that are deep enough to deal with this. But they may have smaller customers that don't have the money. And so that's going to throw them in a hole. Next, there's a golf tech firm called TrackMan that let the records of 32 million of their users exposed on the internet. Now, who needs stinking passwords? They're overrated. Apparently that was not required for them. Thousands of golf pros and tens of thousands of coaches are among their customers. So there's a lot of data. Exactly what was stolen is unclear. 110 terabytes of data. So it's a fairly big breach. And they have not bothered to notify their customers. Maybe they think this is not personally identifiable. Maybe they don't think it falls under the terms of the various state privacy laws. Don't know if that's the case, but I'm sure the lawsuits will follow, and by that time we'll figure out what's going on. Next, the U.S. Looks likely to sign, maybe, I hope not, a really bad cybercrime treaty at the UN. Russia, China, and other totalitarian governments have been trying to get the UN to pass a treaty which would force governments like us to go off and help them repress and murder their own citizens who are using foreign IT systems like Microsoft or Google or something. The only fly in the ointment for making this happen is that, assuming that the U.S. signs it at the UN, which is not clear, but it seems like the ambassador is a bit embarrassed not to sign it. So we'll see about that. But even if the U.S. signs it at the UN, it doesn't become binding until the Senate passes it. President signs it. So, we can hope that won't happen. Next, 13 states are suing TikTok for being addicted. Actually, I think it's technically 12 states in D.C. I can't argue that it's addictive. It is, although I'm not a TikTok user, so it's not addictive to me, but it is addictive, clearly. But I don't think it's any more addictive than, say, Facebook or Trump's social media company or any of the other online products like that. What is different, of course, is owned by China, and China bashing is kind of in these days. So anything you do to bash China is a good thing for politicians. No doubt it'll take years for this to get sorted out. Now, remember, there's also a potential ban of TikTok coming due in January. TikTok is currently suing the United States over that ban, so stay tuned on that one. I don't know, maybe, and it's in the Court of Appeals, I guess, at this point. I'm not exactly sure why it started in the Court of Appeals, but it sounds like it did. But we'll know more about that before January. So this was just a bit of a mess. Next, New York is forcing hospitals to improve their cybersecurity practices. New York finally realized that hospitals are not going to improve their cybersecurity unless they're forced by law to do that. And there have been a lot of hospitals in New York that have been hit by ransomware attacks, and obviously hospitals elsewhere, but they're only worried about hospitals in New York. This only applies to general hospitals, which are hospitals that admit patients for in-care, offer 24-hour in-care services. There's about, 150 or so hospitals like that in New York. They're going to have they model this regulation after their regulation, well-known regulation for financial institutions. So these hospitals are going to have a range of cybersecurity practices. And, I think that will, generally speaking, improve for these 150 organizations. Will definitely improve their cybersecurity. So we shall see. And lastly, the news bites. Microsoft is confirming that they do have a bug in the management console, which is being exploited. There is no patch for it. But unless you download Microsoft Management Console scripts, you really don't have anything to worry about. Next, AT&T is facing porch pirates who apparently probably have insider information, because what appears to be happening is these guys are following the delivery trucks around as they deliver iPhones to people's houses, and then they get dressed up in Amazon vests and come and take them off the porch. AT&T, I always love the PR guys, say, well, we don't think our system has been compromised. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's just some person inside of AT&T who is selling the data. But this is happening in multiple states, and it's a problem. It does point out that it's probably hard as a very large company like AT&T is to not have somebody inside the company who has malicious intent. Much easier to protect against that for smaller companies. Next, the hacker who stole the Star Health data. Star Health is a big health insurance provider in India. Said that Star's management was in on the deal. They had come up with this deal between Star and, now remember, these are hackers, so take it with a grain of salt. But they had come up with a scheme where Star was going to give them backdoor access. They were going to pay them $150,000, and after the deal was done, they said they wanted more money. Star said they wanted more money. I don't know what India does with people like that, but I don't think it's going to be very pleasant. So if it turns out this is true, that's not going to be good for the management of the insurance company. And next, the Cyber Insurance Provider Coalition says that the number of claims that they're seeing the first half of the year went down, but the size of the claims went up. So that's not good. They also said that 40% of their ransomware victim customers are paying the ransom, which is why, of course, ransomware is a big deal, because you get paid. Half the time you get paid. And this is kind of humorous, although I'm sure companies don't think it's humorous. Companies are using AI to filter job applicants, and some people are saying they're posting a lot of fake job positions. I'm not exactly sure what the motivation is there, but there's now software available for free on the internet that allows you to use AI to apply for jobs, and it builds a custom cover letter and a custom resume. One guy was talking about, he went to a local cafe to eat breakfast, fired up the software, put the laptop away, and ate his breakfast. And by the time he was done with breakfast, the AI had applied for 12 job positions for him. And some people are saying that it's actually working, that they're getting interviews. One person said that they just let it run 24/7, and they had applied to like 2,500 jobs. So one would assume, if you're moderately competent, if you apply to 2,500 jobs, somebody will hire you. So that's where karma comes back to bite you in the rear end. If you're going to use AI, then the applicants are going to use AI too. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Until next time, stay safe. Of course, if there's anything we can do to help you, please reach out to us. And thanks for listening.